This is a new month and a new set of readings. This month's readings are by Dr. John Waterhouse, and I had the honor of meeting with him when he was, I think he was still spiritual director of Centers for Spiritual Living. So, anyway, here we are. The daily guides, the quote on the whole daily guides for the month is from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who says, "The currents of universal being circulate through me. I am part and particle of God." That kind of sets the stage for this month's readings. From what I see, just glancing at this, Reverend John Waterhouse is kind of explaining the basic philosophy of science of mind, or religious science if you prefer, which to my way of thinking is a spiritual philosophy. Is it religion? Technically, yes, but it's more of a spiritual philosophy than anything. And I think if you bear with me and hear most of this month's readings, then I think you'll agree with me. And you'll also see how it makes sense in the greater concept of things. It's really more in line with how the mystics of all different religions think. The concept of God, quote unquote, is more of a mystical one than, say, regular religious ones. It doesn't regard God as a superhuman being sat on a throne somewhere, rewarding and punishing and sort of seeing over a heaven. It's, as I said, it's more like the view of the mystics, who saw God as a universal essence in and through and as everything. So that's my preface to this month's readings. So you can take that as you wish. And let me see. So what about Reverend Dutch? Oh, looks like I got a visitor here, a feline by the name of Elfie. Reverend Dr. John Waterhouse says he's been a student of religious science, or science of mind if you like, for 40 years. And he and his wife, the late Reverend Dr. Barbara Waterhouse, founded Centers for Spiritual Living in Asheville in 1995. And then he served 2 terms as president and field leader of Centers for Spiritual Living. And he is most recently the spiritual leader of Centers for Spiritual Living in Fort Lauderdale in Florida. And he currently resides in South Florida, and there he writes, produces a podcast, and speaks to spiritual communities on topics of spiritual awakening and mastering manifestation. He's just released his 3rd book, Spirit Awakening, Reflections on a Spiritual Journey. So that's a little bit about Reverend John, and this is the intro to the month's readings. He says, as we approach the 100th anniversary of the Science of Mind magazine, this seems like a good time to experience Ernest Holmes' original words for what is now referred to as the Declaration of Principles for Centers for Spiritual Living. He says, we begin this month's daily guides with an exploration of these principles with the intention of revealing their deep and profound meanings as the foundation of the faith of Centers for Spiritual Living. And he says Ernest Holmes published What We Believe in the first issue of Religious Science, and it was later changed to Science of Mind magazine, and that happened in October 1927, which is, as you know, about 99 years ago. And he says, over time, some words were changed to reflect gender-inclusive language, and the Ernest Holmes original I statements became we statements. He says, we're using the same text here as it appears in each issue of this magazine, and it does. It's repeated in every issue of the magazine. And then for the remainder of the month, he says, I offer some of my favorite Ernest Holmes quotes that have been touchstones over many years of studying and practicing science of mind. So whether you are part of the religious science community or not, these principles are they're pretty universal, actually. And, well, you'll see that as you go along. First quote is from, it's actually from Paul's letter to the Romans, believe it or not. And that's chapter 1, verse 20. Whole title is The Living Spirit Almighty, as I said. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, God's eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood for what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Now that seems kind of convoluted. Well, the writer of the letter to the Romans back in the 1st century, potentially Paul, but not necessarily the Apostle Paul, is saying that God's present everywhere, and you can see God's qualities in and through and as everything. And there in Psalm simply says, we believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, and that's in what we believe. And this little cat that's on my lap here wants my attention. Aye. And you are an expression of that one divine source, Alfie, but you just don't know it. And this is Reverend John Waterhouse. He says, Ernest Holmes begins his declaration by recognizing God not as a distant entity, but as the fundamental reality underlying all existence. So when he says, we believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, he acknowledges a dynamic, omniscient presence, all-knowing presence, if you like, that is always active, creative, and responsive. It's never static, and it's not anthropomorphic. God is living spirit, the infinite intelligence by which, and I would say and through which, everything exists. He says, why is this important? He says, I see it as a logical starting point for the exploration into the divine as something greater than anything that we've imagined or could have entirely comprehended. So it was certainly mine. As I entered adulthood, I knew there was a hole in my understanding of the God known to my ancestors, the concept of which no longer resonated with me. That is, some anthropomorphic, superhuman male being sitting on a throne, judging everybody. He says, as a spiritual teacher, I have now for many years asked my students to avoid the trap of thinking that they fully understand God, the divine, the all, if you like, spirit. Our finite use of mind can never completely reveal that which is infinite. So, that goes without saying, right? If you're infinite, you cannot comprehend if you're finite, you cannot comprehend the infinite. It's kind of like a two-dimensional creature trying to understand a three-dimensional world, if you like. Our task is to continue every day becoming ever more aware of this presence within and all around us. And this, of course, is what we call spiritual work, meditation, if you like, contemplation. We're called to abandon the limiting ideas about this presence that many of us were taught in our youth, and instead to begin the sacred journey of discovering what divine presence is and how it works. He says this is our first step on the path to spiritual enlightenment. So in other words, he's going to take us on a journey this month that gives us a different concept of that which brought everything into being. It's not some overgrown anthropomorphic or human-like, if you prefer, being, as I said. So hold on to your seats and buckle up, and well, somebody has to bring us for the rest of the month. Although I may not fully understand it, I know there's a divine presence within and all around me through which I have my being. In other words, there's this power, there's this presence, which is in and through and as everything. It's in and through you, it's in and through me, it's in and through this little animal that you can't see here that's sitting very prettily on my lap here and paring away on wants attention. So it's in everything. Just a couple of quick reminders. As I said, my colleague Reverend Lisa Ryan is reading from another source this month at 9:15 every morning. Danielle Johnson does her usual midweek meditation. And if you're more interested, if you check our website, you can see that we have lots going on during the week. We have a book study on Monday evenings. We have a book study on Wednesday evenings. We have something called Philosophy Friday, which is from 7:30 till 9 Central Time. Every single Friday, we have a service at 11 a.m. every Sunday. I've got lots of different classes going on. Just go to creativelifespiritualcenter.org. And our website is being updated. It's kind of looks different, shall I say, but anyway, it's got all the information on there. So come and check us out. And just know with me that there is one life, one presence in and through us, everything, and that it is uplifting you right now, it is uplifting me right now, and it supports everything that is in existence. And so it is. And until next time, namaste.